Thank you for your question. I want to say that, in effect, on this topic, not only on this topic, but on many of the other thorny topics of relations between U.S. and Mexico, we have had an open, frank, trusting conversation between President Obama and myself. We have spoken of assault weapons. He is well aware of our problems. And we have described it as it is, from the moment that the prohibition on the sale of assault weapons a few years ago. We have seen an increase in the power of organized crime in Mexico. Only in my administration, in the 2 years and 4 months, we have been able to see, or rather we have seized, more than 16,000 assault weapons. And in the efforts we have made to track their origin, and President Obama has referred to that, we have seen that nearly 90% of those arms comes from the United States. Those weapons come from the United States. There are about 10,000 sales points in the U.S.-Mexico border, only at the border. On the other hand, I do believe that our relationship, the new era we must build in our relationship between Mexico and the United States, must be one with trust and respect. And we definitely respect the decision of the U.S. Congress and of the U.S. people in this regard, because they are very well aware of President Obama and his government's willingness to move forward on these issues. We know that it is a politically delicate topic because Americans truly appreciate their constitutional rights, and particularly those that are part of the Second Amendment. I personally believe that as long as we are able to explain clearly what our problems in Mexico are, then we might also be able to seek a solution that, in respecting the constitutional rights of the Americans, at the same time will prevent, or rather avoid, that organized crimes becomes better armed in our country. But we have to work on it. But we fully respect the opinion of the U.S. Congress, and we know that there's a great deal of sensitivity regarding this topic. But there are many, many things that we can definitely move forward in. For example, in armament, it is not only a matter of seeing whether we can change the legislation on assault weapons. We have already said what our position is, but we might also be able to see whether they can apply existing legislation in Mexico and the United States on armament. For example, in Mexico, it's a matter of enforcement. With the Export Control Act, for example, the Export Control Act, this is in the United States, prohibits the export of weapons to those countries where those weapons are prohibited. And that is the case of Mexico. If we actually comply with the U.S. law, or rather if everybody complies with the U.S. law that prohibits the sale of these weapons and their export to Mexico, we can move a great deal forward. President Obama has made recent decisions in the last few weeks, and we value them and appreciate them. For example, to reinforce the operational capability of U.S. border agencies in order to comply with this legislation and with other laws, in order to review the flows of entry not only into the United States but also the outgoing flows, outgoing from the U.S., to make sure that there is no illicit money in strict compliance with U.S. legislation. I think these are very important steps. But there is a problem, and only as long as we build on this trust and we clearly explain to citizens of both countries how we must find a solution, we will be able to achieve one. We do so respectfully, presenting our position, knowing full well how the U.S. people feel about this, and being fully respectful of the sovereign decisions that the United States might make, or that any other country might make. Grupo Imagen. One more thing I forgot to mention. One other thing we can do is to track the weapons that we have in Mexico. If we manage to detect weapons sold illegally in the United States in violation of this law on the control of weapons exports, or if in the United States they can have probably move forward on a good registry of armament, or on the prohibition of certain massive sales of weapons, for example, to a hunter or to a common citizen. We know that these people do not usually buy hundreds of rifles or assault weapons or of grenades. If we can move forward in those areas, I do believe that security, both of Mexico and both of the United States and Mexico, will improve, because those weapons are pointing against Mexican people and Mexican officials today. But crime is not only acting in Mexico, it is also acting in the United States. Organized crime is acting in both countries, and I do hope that those weapons that are sold today in the United States and are being used in Mexico, I hope the day will never come in which they will also be used against the North American society or against U.S. officials, just like they are now being used in Mexico.